The fluorescent hallway of St. Marian's Academy buzzed faintly, casting cold light on peeling walls. Olivia adjusted her flashlight, the only senior brave enough to investigate the strange noises. It was supposed to be a dare. Sneak into the abandoned school wing after hours, record proof of ghosts, and win social media glory. Olivia regretted agreeing immediately. The door to the east wing creaked open, revealing a corridor lost in time. Torn posters, faded lockers, and an eerie stillness made her stomach churn. Her phone buzzed, a message from her best friend Jake. "You okay? Looks creepy AF. Come back if it's too much." Olivia scoffed but typed, "I'm fine." A sharp clatter echoed from a distant classroom. She froze, her flashlight beam trembling as she tried to convince herself it was just the old building settling. She approached the room cautiously, her footsteps echoing in unnerving rhythm. The door was slightly ajar, revealing dusty desks and overturned chairs. A breeze brushed past her neck, carrying the faintest whisper. "Leave." Olivia spun, heart pounding, but the hallway was empty. The air smelled faintly of chalk dust. Determined to stay rational, she stepped into the classroom. Her flashlight caught faint scribbles on the blackboard. The words, "Get out," were written in jagged chalk. Her heart raced as the door slammed shut behind her. She lunged for the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic clawed at her chest as whispers grew louder. The whispers weren't random, they were chanting her name. Olivia banged on the door, screaming for help, but the thick wall swallowed her voice. The chanting stopped abruptly. The silence was worse. Her flashlight flickered, the beam catching the faint outline of something or someone near the blackboard. She strained her eyes. The figure was a girl in a tattered school uniform, her head tilted unnaturally. Olivia whispered, "Who are you?" The figure raised a hand and pointed at her. Its eyes were empty voids, and its mouth stretched into a scream Olivia couldn't hear but felt in her bones. Olivia bolted for the window, smashing it with her flashlight. Shards of glass scattered, and icy night air poured in as she scrambled out onto the ledge. She was 3 stories up, her breath fogging as she clung to the building's edge. Below, the overgrown courtyard seemed to beckon her to jump. A hand clamped around her ankle, pulling her back inside. She screamed, kicking at the pale, cold grip. The empty-eyed girl loomed above her. "Stay," the girl hissed, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. Olivia kicked harder, breaking free, and tumbled back into the empty classroom. The girl was gone. Olivia scrambled to her feet, clutching her flashlight like a weapon. Her pulse thundered as she searched for another way out. The hallway was different now, longer, darker, with walls covered in rotting wood. She ran, her footsteps muffled by the soft, decaying floor beneath her. Doors lined the endless corridor, each creaking open as she passed. Inside, she caught glimpses of ghostly figures, students trapped in silent, frozen screams. A low growl came from behind her. Turning, she saw a shadow crawling on the ceiling, its limbs contorted and jerking unnaturally as it approached. Her scream caught in her throat as the shadow dropped in front of her, blocking her path. It was formless but radiated malice that chilled her to the core. The flashlight flickered again, and in its strobe-like flashes she saw the shadow take on familiar faces, her own, Jake's, and even the empty-eyed girl's. "You don't belong here," the shadow rasped, its voice a distorted chorus. It lunged, but Olivia darted through a side door, slamming it behind her. She found herself in the gymnasium, its bleachers warped and floorboards cracked. The air was thick, and the faint sound of laughter echoed from nowhere. A basketball rolled toward her, its thuds unnaturally loud. She kicked it away, but it rolled back, stopping at her feet. The laughter grew louder. She backed away, tripping over something soft. Looking down, she saw a crumpled Letterman jacket stained with what looked like old blood. The lights above flickered violently, revealing flashes of shadowy figures in the bleachers, their eyes glowing faintly as they watched her. "Why me?" she shouted, her voice breaking. The only reply was the laughter, now deafening and distorted, echoing endlessly in the cavernous gym. Suddenly, the gym lights went out completely, plunging her into total darkness. She fumbled for her flashlight, but it refused to turn on. A single spotlight flicked on, illuminating the center of the court. The empty-eyed girl stood there, holding a broken pocket watch. Olivia felt an invisible force pushing her forward, closer to the girl. Her body moved against her will as the girl whispered, "Time's up." The watch's hand spun wildly before shattering. Olivia fell to her knees, the air thick with the sensation of 1,000 unseen hands clawing at her. Her vision blurred as the room twisted around her, becoming a swirling vortex of shadow, whispers, and faint screams. She felt herself slipping away. When she opened her eyes, she was back in the hallway, but something was wrong. Her reflection in a broken locker window stared back, smiling. Her phone buzzed again. It was Jake. "Hey, where are you? We're worried. Come back." She tried to reply, but her hands wouldn't move. The reflection tilted its head, lips mouthing words Olivia couldn't hear. Behind her, the empty-eyed girl appeared, smiling for the first time. The phone slipped from her grasp, clattering to the ground. Her flashlight dimmed, the hallway disappearing into darkness as the whispers resumed. Olivia was never seen again, but students swore they heard her footsteps echoing through the East Wing, always followed by faint, mocking laughter. The clock struck midnight as the last janitor locked the doors to Hazelwood High. In the shadows, Danny crouched by the side exit waiting for silence. Her friends called her reckless, but tonight's dare was too tempting. Enter the school's abandoned East Wing and stream herself, surviving until dawn. Easy likes, easy fame. With a flashlight in one hand and her phone in the other, she slipped inside. The air was thick, smelling faintly of mildew and something metallic. The East Wing had been closed for years after an unexplained fire gutted several classrooms. Stories of strange sounds and shadows made it Hazelwood's favorite ghost story. The beam of her flashlight danced over old lockers, their paint peeling like ancient bark. A soft thud echoed from deeper in the hallway, making her pause. "Just the wind," Danny whispered, forcing herself to move forward. The floor creaked beneath her sneakers, each step louder than the last. She tried to focus on the dare. "What's up, guys?" she said into her phone, her voice steady. "Live from Hazelwood's haunted wing. Let's see if the ghosts show." A sudden bang startled her. She spun around, her flashlight landing on an open locker. It hadn't been open a moment ago. "Creepy," she muttered, approaching cautiously. Inside was an old notebook, its edges singed. The name Rebecca H. was written in shaky, faded letters. Flipping through its brittle pages, she found strange, scrawled messages. "It watches. Don't stay. Run." The last page had a single word scratched repeatedly. "Trapped." Danny felt a chill crawl up her spine. The notebook slipped from her hands, landing with a muffled thud. The hallway seemed darker now, more alive. A faint laugh echoed from the far end of the corridor. It sounded like a child's giggle, light and playful, but horribly out of place. "Okay, very funny," Danny called out, her voice breaking. "Who's there?" The only answer was the groan of the building settling, or something moving. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her friend Lila read, "Are you okay? You're not answering." Danny's heart skipped. She hadn't heard it ring. She typed back quickly, "I'm fine, just creepy here." As she hit send, the lights overhead flickered, then went out completely, plunging her into darkness. The flashlight's beam dimmed for a moment before steadying. The shadows seemed to shift, thickening in the corners, coiling like smoke. "Stay calm," she whispered to herself. Her breathing quickened as she turned in a slow circle, scanning for any sign of movement. Suddenly, a classroom door creaked open ahead of her. Warm light spilled out, flickering like candle flames. The sound of faint humming drifted into the hall. Compelled by equal parts curiosity and dread, Danny stepped inside. The room was pristine, desks neatly arranged, as if untouched by time or the fire. A girl sat at the front desk, her back to Danny. She wore an old-fashioned school uniform, her long hair obscuring her face. "Hello?" Danny said, her voice shaking. The girl didn't respond. Danny approached slowly, her flashlight casting long, wavering shadows across the walls. The girl's head twitched, her hair shifting to reveal pale skin. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly, her voice echoing unnaturally in the empty room. Before Danny could respond, the girl's head snapped toward her, revealing hollow black eyes. Danny screamed and stumbled back, dropping her flashlight. The light rolled across the floor, its beam illuminating the girl standing impossibly close now. "You can't leave," she whispered, her mouth splitting into a wide grin. Danny bolted out of the room, her phone forgotten on the desk. The hallway stretched endlessly ahead, each step echoing louder than the last. Whispers rose around her, disjointed and overlapping. "Stay with us. You belong here. It's too late." They grew louder, pressing against her skull like claws. She reached the stairwell, throwing herself down the steps. The air felt heavier, colder, as if the school itself was trying to suffocate her. The door at the bottom was locked. She pounded on it, screaming for help, but her voice seemed to vanish before it could echo. Turning, she saw figures at the top of the stairs, students, dozens of them, their eyes empty and faces twisted with fear. They started descending. "Please, no!" she cried, scrambling backward. Her hands found the handle of a maintenance closet and she wrenched it open, diving inside. The closet reeked of mold and chemicals. She pressed her back against the wall, holding her breath as footsteps shuffled past the door. Silence fell. For a moment she thought she was safe, until a faint knock came from behind her. She froze, realizing the wall wasn't solid. Turning slowly, she saw a small, charred hole. A single black eye stared at her through it, unblinking. "You shouldn't have come," it whispered. She screamed, stumbling out of the closet and back into the hallway. The figures were gone, but the air was thicker now, harder to breathe. Her vision blurred as the world around her twisted. Lockers melted into shadowy doorways, and the floor beneath her feet felt like sinking sand. Ahead, she saw the main doors, the way out. She sprinted toward them, hope surging in her chest. The whispers turned to wails. She grabbed the handles and pulled, but they wouldn't budge. Behind her, footsteps approached, slow and deliberate, accompanied by that same faint giggle. "Let me go," she screamed, pounding on the doors. The giggle turned into a deep, guttural laugh that vibrated through her very bones. She turned to face the source of the sound, but the hallway was empty. Then, the shadows at the far end began to shift. A massive figure emerged, its shape barely human. Eyes opened across its form, each one staring straight at her, unblinking and hungry. Danny fell to her knees as the creature advanced. Her flashlight flickered one last time before dying, leaving her in complete darkness. When morning came, the janitor found the East Wing as empty as always. Only Danny's phone remained, its camera still streaming. Viewers swore they heard faint whispers through the static, repeating a single word: trapped. The heavy rain tapped against the classroom windows as Emma adjusted her camera. She was the last one left in the school, finishing a video project for her film class. Hazelwood High had always been creepy at night, but Emma wasn't afraid of ghost stories. She needed an A on her project, and deadlines didn't wait for fears. Her tripod wobbled slightly as she adjusted the angle, the lens focusing on the chalkboard behind her. A phrase caught her eye: "Do not disturb what rests." "Very funny, Mr. Carter," Emma muttered. Her history teacher loved leaving spooky messages, especially near Halloween. She erased the chalkboard with a laugh and returned to her work. The hallway outside creaked faintly. She glanced toward the door, expecting to see a janitor or maybe a stray student. Instead, the corridor was empty and silent. "Get it together, Em," she whispered. The old building made noises all the time. Still, she locked the classroom door before resuming her filming. Hours passed and the rain outside grew heavier. Her camera battery flashed red. Sighing, Emma leaned down to swap it out from her bag. When she stood again, the chalkboard was no longer clean. The words had returned, but messier this time, as if written in a rush. "Leave now." Emma froze, staring at the chalky scrawl. She was certain she'd erased it. Her hands shook as she grabbed her phone to snap a picture. Her phone buzzed before she could open the camera app. A text from her best friend Megan appeared. "Why are you still there?" "Seriously, leave." Emma hesitated, typing back, "How do you know I'm still here?" The response came instantly. "I don't, but I wouldn't stay in that place after dark." She sighed, shaking her head. Megan always joked about the curse of Hazelwood. Students loved the ghost stories, but Emma had never believed them. Another faint creak echoed outside the room. This time it was followed by a soft knock on her door. 3 taps, slow and deliberate. She hesitated before approaching the door, peering through the small glass window. The hallway was empty, lit only by flickering fluorescent lights. As she backed away, the knocking came again, louder this time. She jumped, her heart racing, and scrambled for her phone. "Hello? Who's there?" she called, her voice shaky. No response came, just the persistent sound of the rain against the windows. Deciding enough was enough, Emma packed her things quickly. She'd come back in the morning when the sun was out, and everything felt less sinister. The moment she stepped into the hallway, her stomach twisted. It was darker than she remembered, the lights dim and buzzing faintly. She hurried toward the stairs, her footsteps echoing eerily. Behind her, she thought she heard something. Soft, shuffling steps matching her pace. Refusing to look back, she quickened her pace. As she reached the stairwell, a loud crash echoed from the floor above. She froze, clutching the rail. "It's probably just the wind," she told herself. But deep down, she knew wind didn't knock over furniture. Ignoring her instincts to investigate, Emma started descending the stairs. Halfway down, her phone buzzed again. Another text from Megan. "Don't look up." Her heart dropped. Slowly, against every ounce of reason, she tilted her head upward. A shadow loomed at the top of the stairs. The figure stood unnaturally still, its outline barely distinguishable in the dim light. Emma's breath caught as it moved, one slow, deliberate step toward her. Panicked, she bolted down the stairs, her feet barely touching the steps. The figure didn't follow, but she could feel its presence watching. She reached the first floor, heading straight for the main doors. Locked. She yanked on the handle, her breath coming in frantic gasps. Come on," she muttered, jiggling the lock. The door wouldn't budge, as if the building itself had decided to trap her. A faint giggle echoed from somewhere behind her. It sounded like a child's laughter, but with something off, something hollow and sharp. Spinning around, she scanned the lobby. It was empty, but the shadows seemed to move, creeping closer as the lights flickered overhead. The giggle came again, this time louder. It seemed to come from the old trophy case in the corner, its glass reflecting warped shapes. Against her better judgment, she approached the case. Dust-covered trophies stared back at her, their golden figures gleaming faintly in the dim light. In the reflection, she saw it, something standing just behind her. Its face was wrong, twisted and stretched into a grotesque mockery of a smile. Emma screamed, turning around, but nothing was there. The lobby was empty, yet the air felt charged, heavy with something unseen. She bolted down another hallway, searching for an open door or window. The walls seemed to close in, the space narrowing unnaturally. A classroom door hung ajar ahead. Without thinking, she rushed inside, slamming the door behind her and locking it. The room smelled of old paper and chalk dust. Desks were overturned as if abandoned in a hurry. On the chalkboard, more words appeared. It's too late. Her phone buzzed again. This time the text wasn't from Megan. It simply read, "Look under the desk." Her hands trembled as she lowered her gaze. Beneath the teacher's desk, a pair of pale, clawed hands gripped the edges. Slowly, a head emerged, its hollow eyes locking onto hers. Emma backed away, knocking over a chair in her panic. The figure crawled out, its movements jerky, like a puppet on frayed strings. She threw open the classroom door, sprinting blindly through the halls. Every shadow seemed alive, reaching out to grab her. Finally, she found the janitor's closet. Ducking inside, she barricaded the door with mops and buckets, her chest heaving with terror. The closet was pitch black, but she felt safer until she heard breathing. It was slow and heavy, coming from somewhere in the cramped space. A cold hand brushed her shoulder. Emma screamed, pushing her way out of the closet and into the hall only to find it empty again. She spotted an emergency exit sign glowing faintly at the end of the corridor. Her heart leapt as she sprinted toward it. As she reached the door, she slammed into something solid. Looking up, she saw the shadowy figure from the stairs towering over her. Its hollow eyes stared into hers as it leaned closer, its twisted grin stretching impossibly wide. "Class dismissed," it hissed, before everything went dark. When the janitor opened the school the next morning, Emma's equipment was found scattered across the floor. No one ever saw her again. Her camera footage showed nothing but darkness, though some claimed to hear faint giggles and whispers if they listened closely.